Are you in or are you out? There's the question for the week of December 9th, 2019. And I'm Armand Diaz with your astrology forecast, here to, well, really just here to pose that question to you. Because in any area of life, that is pretty much what the question is likely to be. Are you in or are you out? Now, it's the Gemini full moon this week. And just a little side note, this is the December full moon. It is the moon closest to the solstice. And the full moon closest to the solstice, if you're in the northern hemisphere, is always a really dramatic one because the moon goes very high in the sky. It goes as high in the sky as it ever will. And so it's one of those things you can go outside and, read a book by the light of the moon or something like that. Very bright, very dramatic, as long as there's no rain and snow and clouds and things like that. But it tends to be pretty impressive for a few days up there. So go take a look at it. There's no astrology involved there, but it is kind of neat. Okay, so the Gemini full moon tends to be about exploring this and exploring that, seeing this and seeing that. It's a very, as I said, expansive, kind of, generally speaking, fun sort of energy. And I think it's a little bit less emotionally reactive than many full moons are, although let's not bet on that entirely. So we have this energy this week that is kind of expansive, upbeat, and then we have energy that is less so. And this is due to Venus's meetings with Saturn earliest Wednesday, colors things from at least Tuesday onwards, I would say Monday onwards, and then going on to meet with Pluto on Friday, or Pluto, which means with Pluto on Thursday. Friday, and but you'll be feeling it Wednesday, Thursday. It's one big mishmash. That's the whole thing. It's Saturn and Pluto. They're so close together. Venus is moving fast, picks up the energy of both. Saturn gives a kind of deadline feeling. Make a decision. Pluto gives a kind of, what are the results of your decision? What are the consequences of your decision? The basic strategy for this week in terms of anything is, if you're sure about something, go ahead. This is a time to go ahead with things. This is a time to get moving. If you're unsure, then you may have to decide and try not to react emotionally. Try not to make a decision of the moment. However, it's worthwhile saying that it's probably necessary in some cases to make a decision, and standing still and not doing something is also a decision, and it may not be the right one. So, you have to make a decision. Make a decision. You can always try to patch things up later. In fact, this full moon is the beginning of what we call eclipse season. That is the lunation before an eclipse, all the way through the second eclipse, and to the lunation afterwards. So we have about 8 weeks of eclipse season twice a year. And this one starts off with a full moon. It is a big fanfare. And in fact, we're going to have a lot of opportunities for change, a lot of opportunities for course correction, a lot of opportunities for dealing with the consequences of our decisions over the next 8 weeks. So we look at this as being a beginning time. And certainly, the dice are still really up in the air. We're just kind of getting a look at how they might be shaking out, on this particular roll. So it's a serious time, and it's going to feel serious with Venus and Capricorn meeting Saturn and Pluto. But, be aware that things get redone, and there are opportunities for course correction as you go along. Okay, now, how is this going to play out? Everywhere. Okay, relationships, certainly. Relationships, particularly ones that are kind of at a tipping point. Are we making this happen, or are we not? Are we going deeper, or are we going apart? If you're at that sort of tipping point, or just, you're starting to really annoy me. If you're at a tipping point like that, this is liable to be quite significant for relationship. This is really going to feel like a bit of a deadline type of time. Most people will not have that going on. Saturn and Pluto will kick the tires of any relationship this week and see what's going on with it. Maybe inject a little bit of self-doubt. Or actually, Chiron stationing on Friday is liable to inject a bit of Thursday, is likely to inject a bit of self-doubt over the course of this week as he stations in Aries. But, you know, I mean, Saturn and Pluto will kick the tires of a relationship just to see where you are with things. It's the beginning of the cycles. You know, Venus aspects Saturn and Pluto throughout the year. This is the beginning of the cycle. It's a kind of refreshing point. It actually is a kind of refreshing point. You know, it may be a little bit difficult. The full moon may bring up some stuff. You may feel a little bit edgy. It may feel like you're kind of like, you know, sort of at the end of your rope on some issues and so on. But it clears things out so that you can start again. It sort of freshens things up. Especially Pluto is a little bit of that sort of, you know, excuse me, Earth. It's a little bit like vomiting. You know, you don't feel great about it, but afterwards, you know, you feel better than before or during. So, you know, there could be a little bit of that. Again, you know, for most folks, it's not a big thing. If you're single and you're thinking about relationship, don't get too down on yourself. It may not be the most upbeat energy for folks. It may not be the most upbeat energy for socializing, to tell you the truth. There could be, especially as we get towards the weekend, we have the Chiron station. We have Venus meeting Pluto. It's Friday the 13th. That doesn't matter much. And then we have the moon in Cancer, which is always very self-protective. The moon is in Cancer throughout the weekend, and that really kind of tends to pull us inwards. So it's not the most expansive energy that we would expect. Again, right around midweek, we have the Gemini full moon. It's giving us at least a burst of energy. And then we start, you know what happens? We might act at midweek. We might make a decision. We might try something out at midweek. And then as we get to the weekend, we're like, oh, I wonder if I should have done that. You know, it's a little bit like waking up the next morning and going, oh, gee, you know, what did I say? So it could be a little bit of that kind of like pulling back in after having this midweek sort of expansive, decisive time. We go, oh, I wonder if I did the right thing there. Now, if you're looking at business stuff has the same sort of energy to it. Oh, is this deal going through or is it not? This is what I need. Am I going to get it or am I not? Very practical, but a very much like a deadline. Hey, come on, this is it. You know, we're happening or we're not. This is going to go through or it isn't. If you're just sort of at work, it may be a time when you're starting to think, you know, it's the end of the year, you know, what's going on? Is this like, you know, we're going to look at bonuses, or we're looking at, or things not going so well? It could be that kind of assessment time for those at work. Creative projects may feel a little bit of a deadline and pressure as well. It may be the need to really focus on things and see if you can get something going. And you may start looking at things and saying, well, is this project work or is this project not working? Is this getting off the ground or is it not? It would probably be a good time to work through on creative projects for the time being, at least. I think that it would be a good idea to sort of put your effort into them. Other things, you know, this week has that coloration of Jupiter going to trine Uranus at the end of the week. This actually happens on Sunday, but it's certainly in force throughout the entire week. Should be very prominent from the full moon on Wednesday, Thursday onwards. And Jupiter-Uranus it's not an aspect that has a gigantic effect on our personal lives, but it has a big effect on the collective. Jupiter-Uranus aspects tend to be very progressively oriented. They tend to, when Uranus and Jupiter are aspecting each other, you tend to get news about technology. For example, Tesla and Elon Musk are often in the news when you have a Jupiter-Uranus aspect. Progressive causes tend to get a little bit more of a boost. It'd be interesting to see with the election in Britain if Labour winds up getting a little bit more power after their election. And of course, you know, you follow the things that are happening anywhere in the world that interest you. But it's that kind of energy that tends to favor and push forward the more progressive side of things. And it's actually in contrast to the Venus, Saturn, Pluto, Cancer, Moon energy. So there is that sort of dynamic. Again, it is on a higher level, on a collective level, it is a, are you in or are you out? Are we going this way or are we going that way kind of feel to it? So it's a tipping point at every at every level. It's a tipping point in our personal lives. It's a typical, what I was saying before. It's a tipping point for business things. It would be an important week to watch the economy. Venus has a lot to do with values and valuations, and with Venus conjuncting Saturn and Pluto, you tend to get honest valuations, especially in Capricorn. You get honest valuations of things. So the markets would be indicating where they think the real value is. So that's something to watch as well. Political, social movements, and so on. Here or there, which way are we going? We're starting to hit a point of making decisions and having to move on them. It's not a time to sit still. It's not a time to act precipitously and emotionally and just erratically. It's not a good time for that. I don't suppose it's ever a good time for that. But it's not a time to sit still either. All right. It's a lot of stuff to deal with. I just came to pose the question. Are you in or are you out? And I'll see you next week, because hopefully when it comes to watching the forecast, you're in.